Hello, everyone. I'm Jason York, and welcome to today's University Business Web Seminar, The Modern Campus and How to Succeed at Digital Transformation, brought to you today by the generous sponsorship of Laserfiche. A couple of housekeeping items before we get underway today. For any technical support, please use the chat panel at the right side of your screen and select my name and type your message. If you're having any problems hearing during the presentation or prefer to listen privately, we will add a phone number and access code to the chat window in just a minute. Also, we welcome your questions. To submit a question to our panelists today, use the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your screen and send your question to all panelists, which is the default option. Don't see a panel? Click the expand panel triangle in front of the panel name. And if you want to access the presentation at a later time, everyone will receive an email with the links to the slides and the archive recording. So with that, I will turn it over now to Dwayne Marshall and Grace Ding, who will lead us through today's presentation. Dwayne and Grace, it's great to have you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
So welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your Wednesday to join us for the webinar. I'm very excited to have Dwayne presenting on their story today. But before that, just wanted to briefly introduce myself and Laserfiche. My name is Grace. I'm the Education Marketing Manager at Laserfiche. We are a global leading provider of process automation and document management solutions. If we go to the next slide here, we have been in the higher ed space and lucky to be working with higher ed for over 17 years now, with all different kinds of institutions, and many of the institutions that we first kind of got started with 17 years ago are still with us. And so, we are proud and honored to have this kind of a partnership with the industry. Over the years, we've developed a lot of solutions and implemented a lot of successful projects with our partner campuses. We touch a lot of areas on campus, student registrar forms, we've automated financial aid processes, we've looked at kind of back office processes like HR, which is what Dwayne will be presenting on today. We've done research administration, grant administration. So, and one of the things that we're most proud about is our very high ratings in terms of customer success and customer experience. You saw on the earlier slide there, we are the highest rated content services platform provider on Gartner Peer Insights. So this is kind of user submitted reviews, and we currently, I think, are a 4.8 out of 5 rating. So that's something that we're very proud about. For those of you who may not be familiar with Laserfiche, just want to give a really quick overview. We have a pretty comprehensive platform. On the top right there, you can see we handle content services. And so this is your document capture and imaging, scanning in your paper documents, getting started with going digital. And then on the top right there, we also help with a lot of process automation initiatives. We have an electronic forms tool, a workflow engine, and task management solutions that can help you kind of alleviate some of that manual administrative burden on your staff. And then underlying our entire platform, we have really stringent security settings. We have collaboration tools. We integrate with your core campus systems. And we also provide a lot of out-of-the-box reporting and analytics. So today, Dwayne will be sharing primarily how they have been using process automation tools with the focus on e-forms and workflow, with a bit of document and records management to streamline critical operations at Prairie View A&M University. So without further ado, Dwayne, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Grace, for allowing me to share my experiences with you guys today. So who am I? I'm native of Kingston, Jamaica. Came here to Texas and attended Prairie View A&M University, where I have my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And I also have a master's in business administration. And throughout my time at Prairie View, I've worked in the HR department, doing multiple things. I mean, from employment, web development. I've been their records manager at one point, even their systems analyst. And then I moved over into IT itself. And then that's where I've been managing the whole document imaging system that we have, which is through Laserfiche. And I'm their business analyst. So I have a bit of experience in multiple areas, which is allowing me to help get that digital transformation in terms of what I did for HR and different areas. So a little bit about the university. I mean, we're the second oldest public institution of higher education in Texas, and we were established August 14, 1876. And we're one of the 11 universities that make up the entire Texas A&M University system. So we have over 9,000 students. We have a little over 1,200 employees that fluctuate. Again, we have a student-to-faculty ratio of 18:1, which makes it a good experience for our students. We're also one of the NCAA Division I schools, which is pretty awesome as well. And what we do offer at the university, we have over 50 bachelorette degrees, we have 37 master's degrees, and 4 doctoral programs that we offer. So right here, we're going to have some poll questions that we'd like your guys' feedback on, and I can just read through. So, the first one is, within your institution's business operations, what are the main causes of process inefficiencies? We have your over-reliance on paper and processes, a lack of interdepartmental communication, duplicate manual entries into multiple primary systems, inefficient process design. There are no process inefficiencies, might be the case. We have that second question we'd like your feedback on. So do you have a strategy for digital student records management compliant with state and federal regulations? Very important. So please give us your feedback on that and let us know, because then this is going to help us as we go through the presentation. It's going to spark questions and ideas, just different talking points. Okay, so as I'm moving through and letting you know that Laserfish is one of the products we decided to use, and throughout the Texas A&M University system, it's been adopted from ranging around 2004 until current. And Prairie View as an institution, we joined in 2010, 11 is when we decided, and we got our own instance on campus, and that helped us to push forward with our digital transformation. And then around 2013, we moved over to the Texas A&M University Shared System Platform, which was a main cost saving, because then as we're going to be pushing products, then we were always looking as a university, we all know we're trying to save money at some point, some way. So through that platform, we were able to save some costs. So for here at Prairie View, the thing is what our push for digital transformation, and initially it was just 2010, and then our VP wanted to mainly just decide to go away from storing a whole lot of paper. We all have a ton of paper everywhere, and that's what we're used to, and her main push at that time was to have just the storage. But as we saw Laserfish and what the products were, we were like, you know what, we can do a bit more than just storage, and we decided to push forward and then make a bigger push as we move to transform everything from not only storing, but to mostly like forms and any other workflow processes that we could come up with. So we definitely chose Laserfish because of that, being able to store documents, and especially in multiple formats. If you're going digital, everything, we needed something that could store whatever format that was out there. Laserfish offered that for us. A key point for us as well was the fine-grained access control. Of course, the departments, you're moving them from paper to electronic. Their concern is who can see what. So Laserfish afforded us the ability to grant access from a folder all the way down to a specific document where we could control who could see what. The other thing that we liked was that we could all get large-scale scanning. Of course, you're going paperless at some point, so you don't want to have to be scanning 2-3 pages at a time. We need to do batches, and that's what Laserfish afforded us through their products. And then the ability to create workflow and forms. Transformation, we need a tool that's going to be able to meet those needs, and Laserfish was our key tool that we chose. What I wanted to talk to you about, one of the processes that we went through in terms of our transformation was, for us, our athletic season pass, procedure. Typically, and this is mainly focused on the employees actually trying to purchase tickets. Currently, previously they went through was a paper form that they had to employee complete, and they would submit to the payroll office directly or through campus mail. And if you know anything, you're going to rely on people, then it could be late, it could be delayed. And then the challenge was, of course, it being misplaced on someone's desk or it never got there on time. So again, that was unacceptable. Another part of their old process was that payroll would review that form and then contact the employee if that form was incorrect or missing data. Big problem there. You're going to be having delays. I mean, you're waiting on an employee to respond to you, or to me, it was just definitely just slowing up the process way more than it needed to be. The other thing that the payroll office, when they did it, they would actually have to track those requests, put them on a spreadsheet, and then send them to the athletics office for them to review, and then they could issue tickets. Convoluted process, very time consuming. You may want that ticket for this Friday's game, but spreadsheet didn't get there until Friday afternoon or Saturday or Monday. So it led to a whole bunch of issues that just wasn't working well for the athletics office. So that's when they approached me and we had to try and come up with a solution. Of course, when the athletics office is trying to give out those tickets and you're trying to collect it, very time consuming, pointless. So as we move forward, this is the process that we sat down. I sat down with the athletics director and then mapped out. So with Laserfish, as you're going digital, and for everyone, whether you're going to be creating a form, it's easy to create the look and feel of a form. The hard work comes in when you have to sit down and develop the business process. They had something simple where they just wanted, oh, submit to me, I submit to the payroll office. We came up with it, but then I like to ask questions. The thing is, what else do you want to achieve? And for me, you always have to look for constant ways of improving. So through questions back and forth, then the athletics office decided that, hey, we want to be able to review what's submitted and maybe offer a special or further discount to certain employees. So we build that in. The issue of the employee not finding out when anything was happening, we addressed that through this business process where as it moved through each stage, emails were triggered off. So everyone knew when anything happened to their request, they were getting constant communication from the system. So we mapped out this process, and that's the hardest part, to sit there and think beyond yourself. Is like, okay, I know I have an immediate need, but the thing is you have to go out there and see how can I satisfy other needs or use the technology. Again, we're transforming and everything is digital. We have tools, so let's utilize them completely. So this here is just a capture of the form that we did. So of course, it's just going to capture that personal information. But along with the season pass options, it would give you drop down. So that employee would be able to select, identify how many tickets they needed. And before they even submitted that request, this form, they would get a summary of their entire deductions from their payroll. So going in, they would know before I submit, I know what I'm doing. If I'm not happy with it, make adjustments. So the form had certain triggers on there that allowed us to do a lot of things behind the scenes. And that's anything that you're going to do, just to do any kind of transformation, is to make the experience for that user a lot more, useful and better. They need to walk away happy. So that was one of the things that we pushed as we made this form. So the big thing and the improvement that I and the department took away is that we reduced a process that was like a 2-week down to 2 days. Our payroll office was definitely on board with doing anything electronic. So that was one of the key things. I got buy-in from the department that had to do the actual processing. That's key. So then we reduced the paper by 100%. No more, there's no issues, there's no paper having to float around. Everything is handled all through Laserfish, through the forms that we created. The file, the documents get stored automatically, because then there were also issues. Well, hey, I didn't submit this form. Did I do this? We can show proof instantly. It was filed and there was no misfilings. The employees got their communication through emails. Once the payroll office processed it, they got a summary of what they actually purchased, gave them pickup days and times. So the user experience was a lot better. And then again, we increased our revenues because then the employees started feeling more confident. Hey, I can submit. I know where everything is. Word got around. They started buying more tickets to those games. And we're looking forward to a season. Things are a little up in the air as we know right now, but hopefully if things move online, the athletics department is trying to push their ticket sales through this process. The other process I wanted to go through is more, which a lot of you might be more familiar with, is that onboarding process. For us, it was a little time consuming because then the thing is at the time the HR department was doing, they had launched their Workday or their new employment system, and they ran into a bunch of issues where there was this huge learning curve to be using that software. So it caused a lot of confusions because with their old process, the departments would have to select a candidate and enter that information into Workday. Again, with that learning curve of understanding what Workday is and what it does, it was what fields of information needs to be put in there. It was a little bit confusing for users. So when the document moved through Workday, it routed to multiple areas for reviews, which involved a lengthy back and forth. And again, with users not knowing who exactly should approve what, it just bogged down the process completely. Then once it did get through that lengthy back and forth process, then HR would then process that document, and then they would send an email. They would physically send that email to the department and to the candidate saying, hey, this is your start date, show up. At the same time, the departments wouldn't necessarily get the email on time, so they would send out a separate email to that new hire, which then led to confusion, like, okay, do I show up when, which day, who, what? So there was a bit of confusion there through that entire process. Then once they did get everything through, then HR would have to gather all related documents because everything was paper. So even though Workday was electronic, it wasn't an imaging, a document management system, so documents had to be routed through emails or walked across campus. So they had to gather all that information, and then came the issue of let's put those documents together. It wasn't being filed properly. They had to rely on students to scan those documents. The process became time-consuming. So they met with me, and then with me having a little bit of HR experience, I was able to sit with them and say, hey, let's figure this out. I'm all about improving and using technology. So we sat down, and this is just a part of the business process that we came up with, how the departments, the documents get kicked off a certain way, email communication. Again, transparency as we're doing anything was one of our key pushes for our digital transformations, definitely using the technology. So we routed the documents, it went to HR, they reviewed triggers, email triggers were happening constantly and reminders, so nothing in the process got slowed down. This slide here just basically goes and shows you all the different notifications that we set up where it depends on if you're a faculty, staff, temporary employee, we configured separate emails to them. And that was, again, transparency, letting that communication go. Everyone is aware of what needs to happen and when. This is just a part of our form that we captured, and everything was triggered based on certain hiring actions. So I was able to go in there and look at the entire process and figure out what needed, who needed certain pieces of information, and built the triggers in. So the thing is, as you're going through any kind of transformation, look down the road, look at the key identifiers there and say, hey, how can I meet these needs now rather than later? So we built that into the process as we move forward, and we constantly try to do that. So the improvements that we had for our onboarding process, we definitely reduced our paper by 75%, which at this point, we're probably going to be pushing it closer to 90 to 100%. Because as we've done our process and we're constantly revising, I've been able to make some of those paper documents all electronic, and the system allows us to upload documents. So we're constantly revising. So we're constantly making changes. And their onboarding process went from, sad as it sounds, from a 2-month process down to a 2-week. And that's huge because then their stuff is not being held up anymore. When a request comes in, all related documents have been attached. So for HR, it was a key thing, and they, tremendously, they love it. So again, keeping your customers happy. And then as part of the process, through Laserfish and through forms, we were able to create the folders for those documents and have them filed instantly. So no loss of paperwork or no misfiling. And then the thing is, all parties involved were notified at the same time. Again, transparency. And then now we built in that piece where IT was normally supposed to create the email accounts for those new hires. We notified and we built in the process so everything gets kicked off. IT knows the minute someone is hired, so they can go ahead and start the email creation, and start their whole access to whatever system that needed, all handled in one process. So that improvement there made a huge difference. So for us, looking for like the digital transformation and what it meant to us was more so than moving from just storing documents electronically. It was to go ahead and improve efficiency. And efficiency came through us creating either workflows through Laserfish or through their forms portal. And that was the key thing. We had to speed things up. Our processes were too slow, and they're just not acceptable in this day and time. The communication was also a key point. And I'm sure others here have experienced that, where you're getting these constant requests. Where is my information? What happened to my request? So by building in that communication piece, it helped out tremendously. The transparency in terms of, hey, I can actually track where my requests are. That was a key thing for all departments, and then university in general. That's something we're trying to constantly improve on, is everyone knowing where their requests are and ensuring that nothing gets slowed down. Compliance is also a big thing, which some may not take into consideration, but I push that because just based on my experience in the different departments, is making sure that whatever you come up with, whatever process, whatever piece you're trying to actually transform, is to not only look at where you are, but look at compliance with either federal or state rules. I mean, that should be the key thing if you're going through audits and you have to answer questions. Whatever process you're transforming, making, or improving, build those key things in so that you can answer your questions ahead of schedule and not have to be scrambling at some point. For best practices and things that I definitely recommend is to involve your IT sooner than later, because then they can give you a better understanding of what you're trying to do, what the timelines and what the resources are and how long it will take. And that's the key thing. I know I'm in the IT, so for those who aren't, it's key to, I mean, hey, we're doing digital, so you might as well involve us at the beginning stages so you won't have these false expectations. I mean, VPs may be asking you for something, and then you're like, well, yeah, I can do it in 2 weeks, but then, oh, I met with IT, and they say it's going to take a month. We don't want to have any bad guy reputation, in other words, so work together, involve the IT, and then you can get ideas flowing a lot quicker, a lot better. For our office, and one thing I always say is I tell departments, and I would like to recommend, is I consult with the information security officer and the records retention officer. I am the university's record retention officer, and within our department, we have information security officer as well. We are able to collaborate on ideas and pass them along as we're moving forward, because the thing is, you can have a document that you're trying to improve on. Sure, you have, but not all fields of information probably should be captured. You know, we have to be worried about sensitive information. If you're moving anything digital, then you're opening yourself to risk. So having that, you know, full-on suggestion and buy-in from your security officer, and then your records officer. The thing is, everything, even though it's digital, I'm sure the things you all know, we cannot keep things indefinitely. So as you have consultation with your records retention officer and your information security officer, they will help guide you so you can build that into your process. So again, staying compliant with federal state laws. Any process that you're going through, and for me, it was to take that holistic view of the problem and solutions and then find ways to provide efficiencies down the road. I mean, again, in the HR process, we weren't involved as IT, but we are actually involved. So the thing is, why not build in, and we built in that communication piece that came in, and we got everything ahead of schedule. If there's a department that you're working with that they're constantly calling you on the phone or you're constantly having to send them information, why not just involve them in the process? And if it's a form, get key pieces of information that they need and put it into the form. It may seem cumbersome on the front end for that user, but you're satisfying multiple needs, which that efficiency will trickle down and they will realize where you're going with this. Another thing, which is to do your own research into any federal or state laws that might be involved in the process. It might be for your department, or it might be you're working along with another department. What I found in one area, I kind of asked them a question like, okay, hey, you're trying to make a change here. Maybe can we adjust certain rules or timelines? The answer I got was, no, it's a state law. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, can I see that state law where it is? Maybe there might be some wiggle room. After a few more conversations, no, it's not a state law. It's our VP decided to have that. I'm like, well, can we get that? Only to find out that it was never a state law, never a VP. It was just a practice that they had adopted many years ago, which leads to that whole thing of that's just the way we do business. And again, this is how you make changes, research it, go into it, and then you can use whatever rules or laws, again, to meet your needs and help change your process. This will help you get buy-in definitely with any transformation of a process or a form, just to learn the rules and laws and then meet them. Please satisfy those needs first, then you can work on what the department needs. For me, I found out, again, if you're doing anything, a detailed testing plan. I've done the form. The individual I'm working with, they have seen the form. It's to involve that end user, multiple end users, and have their feedback. I had to go in there and detail in terms of different scenarios. What should happen if this button is clicked? What if you're this department with this kind of a need? So detail that process out and then that test plan, and then have the users. The high ups, the VPs, it's nice to do a demo, but have your end users test that product and then do a constant tweaking until you have a finalized product that you're happy with. It'll never be perfect, but at least it will eliminate some of those issues that may come up. The next thing is definitely to educate your users and get constant feedback. I'm constantly in communication with the HR department, and I've gotten to a point where it's just an open, and any department I work with on their forms or anything, it's constant check-in or like, hey, whatever processes, hey, do you need to make a tweak here or a tweak there? What issues have you faced? It's that constant, and then you educate the user. You put the information out to the end user who's actually making the request and the person who's doing the processing. If there's any changes to the technology that you're using. For us, if it's Laserfish, then any updates, I'm constantly on a monthly basis updating our users. Hey, this is what's happening. This is a new product offering. Or yes, we can do this now. Would you like to do that? So it's always just providing that information and getting feedback. For us, again, I'm not trying to sell you into using or purchasing Laserfish, but for us, I think it was a key thing to have a vendor that is constantly looking forward, trying to make changes. So for us, it was, why not partner with this kind of a company? Everything within a year, they constantly get feedback from their users. Hey, what issues are you having? And within a year, they make or implement majority of those changes. So for me looking on, it was like, hey, they're constantly progressive and moving forward. So whoever you choose, whatever you're doing, that partnership. Because if you're going to be using their product and spending a whole ton of money, then you might as well have someone that's on that same mindset. And that's Laserfish for us. So it's always key to have that connection. So for me and moving forward, our future projects, again, since we're doing a lot of electronic forms, it's going to be to make that user experience a lot better. So we're going to be able to try and provide database lookups. So by the time that employee or student puts in their ID or identification number, their student number, it can pre-populate. So you're trying to make that experience for the user a lot better, a lot quicker, and less time consuming. I do intend to implement more so of a student form because we have Banner here on our campus. So it's to implement form solutions. Some pieces will be through Laserfish. Some we're just trying to evaluate in terms of what other solutions. But that's the next push for us to get our student forms moved through and all electronic and hand, because the main thing is not only the process. We don't want an electronic system that can't integrate and have and be stored. We don't need an additional step, so it's to make sure we have that done, and that's my next project to work on. And then for any of our electronic forms that handle any kind of payroll deduction, I'm currently working on our capital campaign that's, going out to all our staff and sometimes our alumni just to raise funds to get all that money, process those requests. So that's my next one, which I should have done by next week. So it's a constant thing, a constant push across the campus as we meet and you get buy-in from different areas. They get excited. So that's what helped our transformation. So it's a success story for us, but it's a small success, but we're constantly striving to do a whole lot better. And as we go through, we're going to just make it. So for me, key piece of advice with any kind of transformation to be successful is to get buy-in from the higher ups, but main thing from your end users. Get a department that can be your champion, you can do all your testing. For us, it was payroll, and that's one of the main things. Everyone was happy with that process. And then it's your testing and involvement of as many people as possible. For us, our key things was our records officer, information security, and definitely like compliance. So big takeaways for me, and that's what I'd like to pass on to you with any kind of transformation, just to look into that.
Thank you so much, Dwayne, for sharing. There's a lot of really great information there and really concrete feedback. So thanks so much for being generous with your experiences. So we're opening it up to questions from the audience today. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, you can either enter them into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand corner or the chat box where you can message all of our panelists. I actually had a couple questions, Dwayne, to kick us off.
Okay.
You talked about you have a pretty unique background in which you've kind of worked within a business department and then transitioned over to the IT side. And it also sounds like, obviously to make any of these projects successful, there needs to be a really great process for how IT and the business side can cooperate and work together. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what is your process for working with business departments? What types of meetings do you have? How many meetings? Who's at the table? That kind of thing.
Well, we have, once a department, for us in our area, our VP has tasked us to go ahead and improve our processes as many as possible with the forum. So it's a matter of me just reaching out to departments, letting them know, hey, I'm available. So that's the first thing, letting them know you're willing and available to go over their processes. Then I do meet, I try to identify as many departments with maybe simpler forms, again, to get that buy-in. So the ones with the easiest forms, the simplest forms, that's who I contact first to get them going. And then it goes through just the process of multiple meetings and asking the questions. This is your form. This is what you want to improve on. Okay, fine. How else do others work with this particular form? Who's asking for information from you? Is it internal? Is it external? State, federal rules? I try to gather as much information. So it's a involved session, 30 to 45 minutes of me just asking questions. What rules, what governs this form? Because then the thing is, anything you're going to transform, it's more so you have to meet multiple needs more so than just your focus, just that single-minded focus you have to meet. So it's just a ton of meetings, a lot of follow-up with emails. And also for me, I like to, once I go in, I tell exactly what the product can do. So even before they start to ask, hey, we just want to do a form, simple. The product can do A through Z. Which one of these pieces would you like to implement? Because it's more than just, hey, just satisfying that one need. So it's long meetings, just going through a lot and telling them exactly what the product can do.
That makes sense. It's sort of a combination of user education and basic training, as well as just keeping in constant communication with them.
Yes.
Fantastic. Another question that I had, you talk a lot about getting buy-in, and obviously leadership buy-in is very important, but I think, even given that there is a lot of need to get buy-in from the individual departments or just individual people that you're working with. In the work that you've done, did you encounter any resistance to change? And if so, how did you handle it? In general, how did you get additional buy-in from different people for these projects?
Yeah, definitely they're going to get the pushback from just the standpoint of its technology. A lot of people are resistant to that, just moving with technology. So the aspect of, oh, I'm going to do this now electronic, what's going to happen to my job? And I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. You will have a job because you still need to process. So getting the buy-in from different areas would take me meeting with the different individuals, kind of going through their process, helping to educate them on what it is they will be doing in this new vamped process. It's always interesting, the resistance you get and pushing back on it. I like to say, for me, from the record standpoint, I also bring in that whole litigation or any lawsuit pending. The thing is, hey, you're pushing back on this, but you have these consequences that you could be facing. But we can eliminate these by revamping or improving on certain processes. So the pushbacks came from individuals, but it's more so once you have, true, heartfelt, down-to-earth conversations spelling out exactly what can happen, then you kind of get that understanding and the resistance kind of goes away. And especially when you have different areas, the key thing, everyone on our campus, we had some what's considered trouble areas where departments then that weren't necessarily loved or liked, which is the HR, because they're always or our payroll. But once we got the payroll department on board and we could make reference, hey, payroll is using this or HR is using this, they were like, really? Like, yeah. So those champion departments is what we help to reduce that pushback.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's sort of connected to the first question where it's about user education and dispelling some of that fear just comes with explaining exactly what's going to happen.
Yes.
Nice. And also identifying champion departments and also good pilot projects to be successful so that other people can see exactly the benefits that they can get out of these transformation initiatives. Fantastic. Thank you. Just a kind of more general question. If you had to do either these two processes or any process that you've worked with all over again, are there any things that you would do differently given what you know now?
I would, in terms of differently, I think it was more so of pushing more of my ideas. The departments, in particular with the HR one, they wanted a certain thing. It was being pushed from the VP through the HR director. I think I would have tried to get involved in their decision-making process, their meetings a lot sooner, because then I could have informed them more so what the system or, for the forms, what it could do. Because then they sat there, had their meetings, and then pushed the timeline down to me then. If I could have been involved, instead of the back and forth by saying, hey, the technology, the form can't do this or the form could do this, I would have been able to have those meetings early on. So I think it's just trying to get involved in those decision-making process meetings a lot sooner, because then it would have sped up the entire process instead of me having to go back and forth. So, and that's why my whole thing is that try and involve your IT as soon. The minute you have an idea, hey, let's make this transformation, involve IT rather than later on down the road. So I would have made that change of just being involved a lot sooner.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have a question from an attendee here. Can Laserfish talk or integrate with most HR, accounting / bursar, and student information systems and databases?
So far, yes, that's what we've seen. I mean, Grace, you can probably add more in terms of that integration piece, but yes, we've seen that they can. What is the key thing is that every time we raise questions to Laserfish, like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? They're like, you know what? We'll look into it. and within 6 to 8 months, they have a solution. So again, even if they can't today, I guarantee you probably by January, February, they would have a product offering. So that was the key thing. So yes, Laserfish can do a lot more integration.
Yeah, and I can add a bit more to that. We try to take a two-pronged approach. For a lot of the major campus systems, your Ellucians, your PeopleSofts, your CRM systems, we try to forge partnerships with those companies to develop, as much of an out-of-the-box integration solution as we can. But that's not always possible. It depends on whether those companies are open to working with us. And it's also a timing thing. So we also create a lot of out of the box tools, as well as provide custom development tools for folks to kind of build out their own integrations. So, for example, we have a wizard-driven, no programming needed tool called Connector that can very easily kind of take screen scrape data off of the screen of one application and put it in another application. And that's been really helpful for example, if you're in, let's say, your banner system and you want to pull up all of a student's documents that are stored within Laserfish, with Connector, that's just one click, and you can do that very easily, no programming required. With a lot more complex integrations, of course, and Dwayne was talking about, this is important in terms of the partnership with your vendor. I know we do a lot of custom development building, integrating the Laserfish backend directly with your primary system backend. So the simple answer is yes. It just depends on what systems you use and how you want to approach it. But thanks for the question. It's a good question. I think another question that I had, Dwayne, is sort of, I know you kind of emphasized some of the key takeaways, some of the best practices. What are the kind of biggest or most important ones that you want folks to take away from today's presentation?
Again, involvement with IT and whatever department you're working with on this. And it's more so, I think, for me, the biggest thing I would say is to look at your entire process holistically. It's, again, not only trying to satisfy your immediate need, what other departments you can involve and, in other words, fix their issues in terms of not fixing issues, but when I had referenced earlier where you're having to supply information to them or on a constant basis, then involve them in the process. Make that one form. It might go from, let's say, an onboarding form to I don't know what you could call it, but it could involve a lot more departments where they're involved. So it's that holistic view, which I think is the main thing. Step outside your box, and you're not trying to do the work for another department, but hey, it's going to make your life easier if you involve them, and your one or two processes can meet all of their needs and yours. That's the biggest takeaway for me, and that's what I try to push to any department I meet with, to go over any process that they're trying to revamp or change, is to look beyond just your immediate need and just to try and satisfy as many as you can. Just improve. Constant improvement is always good.
Yeah, I think that's very true. One thing that I hear a lot is transfer, like if you digitize a bad process, it's still a bad process. It's just now digitized.
Yes.
It's not true transformation. And the transformation, I think, to your point, comes from looking at this bigger picture and having these discussions and asking the right questions, and knowing, kind of educating folks on what the tools are that are available, so that you can kind of imagine the possibilities together, right? Rather than just having some sort of a pie in the sky concept for what it is.
Definitely. And to reduce that paperwork, I guess, looking at even the polling questions, that over-reliance on paperwork, it's a big deal, and it's a big thing that, I know all universities are dealing with, and we too are facing that. It's that reliance on paper, but now with our current situation, now that's when this is, to me, a key time to push those electronic processes. You might be using a different version of a paper form, either through DocuSign or some other process. Since they're kind of getting used to it, why not look at your processes and say, hey, you're used to one thing, this is the best time, revamp and create a whole new process.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a question about, I think it's very interesting that you are not just an IT kind of business analyst, but you're also the university records officer. Are there any kind of insights that you can share from your experiences with that? You know, like what are the challenges, what are the biggest challenges that you've seen that people struggle with when it comes to records management? You know, what are some things that folks should keep in mind, even if they're not, you know, thinking about records management on a day-to-day?
I mean, the biggest things too, I mean, regardless of whether it's paper, electronic, you can only keep it for a certain time frame. So it's best to look into it now. I mean, we here have our retention schedule that we try to abide by. So whether you create an electronic form or anything, that is still a state record that you would have to retain, and the legal issues that could come out of keeping it too long. So we're lucky that with Laserfish and the document management piece, we can categorize our documents and do the whole retention and disposition piece all in one. So it's, again, that over-reliance on paper, this will kind of save you. I mean, I preach it in my presentations each month or so when I have trainer, even one-on-one with departments, is use that retention to help guide your processes. After a while, you start to looking like, why am I keeping this? Am I the owner? If not, then don't ask for that piece of paper. Don't keep it. And that will help change your process in general. So when you do move it digital, like you said, if you take a bad paper process and just make it electronic, still a bad process. So using the retention and records, the whole piece of keeping it too long or not keeping it long enough, helps to guide what you should keep and how your process can be shaped, because you don't want to keep stuff too long. So I've kind of been pushing that with records, and that's made, I think, for me, my approach and my job a little bit easier, is that I can push back on a lot of things. When they say, hey, we need X and we need Y, I'm like, no, you don't. That's not your area. You shouldn't even be keeping this. So instead of getting a copy of that document, how about you just get a few pieces of data that you need to do your job, instead of you actually slowing up the process to get a paper copy or now an electronic copy. So I think it's really key to help you. And again, it reduces that liability for the university by not having too much stuff floating around there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I remember the other day when we were talking, you shared an anecdote about how one department thought that a piece of information needed to be kept indefinitely, and then you sort of asked the right questions.
Yeah, it's just asking the questions, and then when they found out that, hey, this is not even something I need to be keeping, then their process changed. They were like, you know what, well, we don't need this anymore. So it took something that was a 2-page document down to like a 1-page or page and a half, because then they're now not asking for certain information anymore. And then I try to push them to, if you're transforming anything and you're going electronic, then do you have reporting system that you can get information from rather than getting documents attached? Go to your reporting tools. You have different systems, you use that, instead of tying up your process. So it's looking at things, again, like I said, holistically and involving as many people, you would get the ideas.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. All right. It looks like those are all the questions that we have. Dwayne and I both shared our email addresses on one of the initial slides. So, if anyone has questions after the web seminar, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. But yeah, thanks again for attending this. I'll hand it back over to Jason, I think.
All right. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Dwayne. Thanks, Dwayne, for sharing your story today about your digital transformation at Prairie View A&M. A lot of great insights, a lot of great takeaways. University Business is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, and current issues in higher education like this. You can subscribe for free and stay up to date to our print magazine, our digital edition, e-newsletters, and web seminars like this one. Thanks again to the generous sponsorship of Laserfish as well. And thank you for joining us. As Grace alluded to, the archive recording will be available to you for your review and share with members of your team at the website below, and you will also receive an email with a link to the slides. So Grace and Dwayne, again, they were very generous to share their contact information. There's a lot of great information here to go over with, so you can share it with members of your team at your leisure. On behalf of University Business, I'm Jason York. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. Take care and have a great day.